liberty and human rights, having decided early in life that I would always take a stand for free speech in particular. I have only recently become aware of what is perhaps one of the greatest issues of our time. Since becoming aware of this, I myself have remained silent until now for many reasons. Fear of feeling underqualified to speak on this issue, fear of alienating certain individuals that I know either personally or by extension, fear of societal backlash, fear of judgment by friends or potential business contacts and collaborators. Funnily enough, these are the very same fears that keep many others from expressing themselves about any topic that is controversial to the mainstream acceptable narrative, and the very fears that are leveraged to curb free speech in the first place, which in itself is what threatens the foundation of a free society. Feeling myself fall prey to this mental trap has been maddening. I have finally reached my breaking point, and by moral conscience and integrity of character can remain silent no longer. What you are about to hear is fundamental truth and nothing more. I ask that to make this worth your listen, that you suspend all personal belief and an emotional response and consider this an appeal to reason. In order to deliver this message, I have released all expectations of how it will be received by the public. My singular aim, as it always has been, is to stand for liberty and truth for all beings. And if any part of this is seen as inconvenient or unfair, so be it. The truth is no respecter of hurt feelings. The truth, when denied, costs us much more. If you are female, then this issue concerns you, and I will explain fundamentally why. If you are male and have care for females in your life, such as mothers, sisters, daughters, a wife, a girlfriend, or friends, this also concerns you, and I ask you for your support. Before diving into this, I wish to provide some context as to my perspective. Being born in a post-suffragist world, in a Western free society, I have taken for granted a certain equality that women were not afforded until very recently in human history. Not simply the right to vote, but the encouragement for higher education, protections in the workplace, and overall a feeling of equal regard among my peers, supported and upheld by institutional policy. This is not to say I have not felt and experienced the social challenges that arise from being female among adolescent males, but suffice it to say I grew up in the era of Beyoncé, women being breadwinners of their own, and rising to the top of their careers as executives. Having no further education on feminism than a brief acknowledgement of women obtaining the right to vote, my perception of feminism in the modern day was that it was divisive and unnecessary, that it was merely a fringe movement of man-hating social justice activism. I thought this neo-feminism was encompassing of the entire historical movement, and I wanted nothing to do with any part of it. Lacking any further critical inspection on the subject, that was the last thought I gave to it for nearly 10 years. I turned my back on women, though I did not see how until very recently. Over the next few years, as I entered early adulthood, I began questioning my own sexuality and felt I did indeed fall within the LGBT classification. This has never been an all-consuming part of my identity, but it is important to acknowledge because it made me more sympathetically aware of issues entering the societal and political sphere. I myself have acknowledged some of these topics here in the past, which I have since quietly redacted due to a radical shift in my perspective. I have since spent many months deprogramming myself of the lies which I have previously uncritically accepted. I believe there is room for a proper spiritual and philosophical discussion on the human expression of divine masculine and divine feminine energies. But these concepts have been distorted and conflated with rigid constructions of gender roles, which I see as false and ultimately harmful to both men and women. However, I am here today to discuss the practical, real-world consequences and threats that this ideology poses to the immutable human rights of women, biological females, and 50% of the human race. I support my position with a series of acknowledgments. The first acknowledgement being the scientifically supported fact that the human race, and every other sexually reproducing species, is bilaterally sexed. There is no physically existing third sex. Intersex individuals exist also along this binary, and I defer here to Exelanzic, who has expanded upon this issue at length, and to the detriment of her YouTube channel, which was censored and deleted. Which brings me to my next point. Women are being actively silenced from participating in public discourse, under false pretenses of hate speech, and even conflation of rational debate with violence. Under the suffocating climate of cancel culture, women in every profession are at risk of losing their livelihoods and having their personal information doxed online, should they so much as assert the biological fact of their life experience as a female. Concerned school teachers, students, and athletes speak to the press only under anonymity for this very reason. Perhaps this is the appropriate moment to acknowledge why women feel so encroached upon, how a mere ideology could make us women feel threatened. What are we so afraid of? Because sex is bilateral, acknowledging the physiology of women with the vast majority of us being fertile, it is women who bear the reproductive burden of childbirth. From it. Let me go back because my video got paused. Because sex is bilateral, acknowledging the physiology of women with the vast majority of us being fertile, it is women who bear the reproductive burden of childbirth. Perhaps this can also be seen as a gift, but in the context of rape, it is far from it. Women and girls are biologically at risk of sexual violence leaps and bounds over men. Rape and sexual assault are reproductively motivated crimes, whether the perpetrator is aware of this consciously or not. It is women and girls who, beyond the psychological ramifications of sexual violence, also may have to live with unwanted pregnancy, undeniable damage to our bodies and our most sensitive organs, assuming we survive the attack and do not later commit self-harm or suicide. This reality alone should be enough to justify the distinction of biological sex and protection of women's only spaces. This statement is not exclusionary of anyone. It is in ultimate support of women and their children. Women are not targeted because they identify as feminine. We are targeted because of our biology. The problem with making exceptions for any male to enter women's only spaces is that we cannot reasonably discern who is benign and who has ulterior motives. It would be impractical to demand proof of nullification surgery upon entrance to women's spaces, even if all women were okay with this, and does not still change the fact that women are entitled to freedom of association, and that includes freedom from associating with men. If you are previously unacquainted with the severity of this issue, allow me to point out that it has reached the level of institutional capture. Now, at every level of education, schools are diverting from prioritizing practical education to teaching prepubescent children about gender ideology and obfuscation of biological fact. Middle schools and high schools are socially transitioning children without parental consent, allowing students to use their bathroom of choice. The NCAA is non-compliant with Title IX by allowing males to compete on female teams and share private changing quarters and showers, much to the discomfort of female players. Large-scale publications are now naming males titles previously created and reserved for women, such as Time Magazine's Woman of the Year. Where this issue really becomes a matter of concern is where it reaches law. All human beings deserve the same rights and protections under the law. I believe all human beings deserve respect and to be afforded opportunities based on their merits, and not denied based on their appearance or other superficialities. Where I have to draw the line is at the gaslighting being foisted upon women that we must accept males into our female-only spaces, be forced by compelled speech laws to describe male attackers as females as a result of that male entering our female-only space, and be told that if we do not concede to this ultimate misogyny, that we are somehow less than human, stripped of our job titles and social standing, and not least of which our dignity as women. What we cannot materially define, we cannot uphold under law. Woman, being equal in human rights to any man, deserves to speak freely without fear, assert her right to privacy, and pursue equal opportunity in educational scholarships and athletic competition. I had taken for granted that this had been established in civilized society. In the current day, the integrity of the laws which ensure this is under threat. The earliest feminists reasoned that a woman was capable of achieving higher virtues than beauty and being pleasing to a man. Neo-feminists today, or rather, pseudo-feminists, maintain that a woman is merely an identity, that so long as one identifies with womanly things, that makes one a woman. And simultaneously, if a female does not identify with womanly things, this must make her not a woman. Pseudo-feminists define a woman by an artificial social construct, not by her immutable biology. This pseudo-feminism has achieved enough social support to influence the law to the detriment of biological female women. Deliberate misuse of language in our court systems, the press, and academia confuse reality and consequently skew statistical data for crime, health, and economic differences between men and women. By accepting men as women, we render null and void all protections which exist for women at the current time, and make arbitrary the biological basis for which we protect women in the first place. As a woman, I have experienced domestic violence, rape, and harassment. We say women are brave for coming forward about these things, yet we do nothing to prevent this from happening in our schools, women's shelters, and sacred spaces. We are quick to shame people for victim blaming, yet we also silence the very women who speak out for women's rights. I have every qualification I need in order to speak on this subject. I am a human being entitled to freedom of speech, and I am a woman by material fact. I reclaim the title of woman and the protections of my rights as such under the law. I stand for every woman, whether she desire the title or not, that she be recognized and respected by good men, and protected where malicious men would not. I urge our fathers, grandfathers, uncles, brothers, husbands, partners, sons, and friends to think of the women they love and care for, to speak up where you are needed, particularly where our young girls cannot. I urge the sisters of my generation to open your minds to the truth and stand your ground with your intellect and your word. I renounce all use of false language. I see the impact that it creates in physical reality. I thank my mother and grandmothers for the work they accomplished before me within the world they endured. I reconcile my own discomfort with my woman being, dispelling the shame and hurt which are ancestrally ingrained and in this lifetime relived. I pray for all beings to love themselves as they are manifest, while feeling free in self-expression, with respect to women's rights, and without the demand for external validation. Thank you.